Hello, BookTube. I have a little bit of a treat for you today, something unprecedented on this channel. Ordinarily, when we look ahead at a new month, we're coming up on June, everybody on BookTube does a sort of a June TBR. They look at books that are coming out, slated to come out in June, that they're really excited about. And ever since I've been on BookTube, every time I've wanted to make videos like this and join in the fun, I've never been able to do it because I was reading well ahead of time. Those of you who are new to the channel, I'm a professional book reviewer, and I get books ahead of time, and so my reading tends to be a little skewed, and it was never really possible for me to join in that fun. But because of the fact that the pandemic has shut down the shipping offices of every publisher in the country, and no one's in the loading docks anyway, that process has largely shifted. I'm getting plenty of e-galleys, plenty of e-books of upcoming titles, but they're much more geared towards the stuff that I am going to review, towards the stuff that I definitely have on the slate to the commission to review, planning to write about, as opposed to the general bounty of unpredictable stuff that we used to see in my mail hauls. One of the results of that situation has been that when I looked ahead to June's coming releases, I saw a bunch of books that I don't have yet, that I am legitimately looking forward to reading. I will either request them from the publisher or I will buy them, which means I can make a June TBR. I did already today make a June TBR BY, a to be read by you, where I talk about 6 books in June, coming out in June, or at least originally dated for June, that I have read already and that I recommend. But it turns out that in addition to that, I can make a legitimate TBR of stuff that I haven't read, except in a couple of cases, but they're special, we'll get to it, that I'm looking forward to. How fun is that? I finally get to be a real booktuber. So I'm going to show you a handful of books that are slated for June release that I am looking forward to. If I do not get these from publishers to review them, I will probably end up buckling down and buying some of them. And the first one is a romance, and I blame Sarah at Steeped in Books for this because it was her channel. If you don't know, she's a fantastic booktuber. She does romance. Oh my, does she ever. She doesn't do exclusively that. She's perfectly willing to try her hand at other things, and she's also in a bit of a nostalgia kick, so she's reading books that she read when she was a teenager. So she's doing Babysitter's Club and Nancy Drew and whatnot, but it's mostly romance. And she reads a wide variety of romances, and she does it with genuine enthusiasm, genuine spirit. She's not partisan. She's not a party hack. If she can go into a book with the highest amount of anticipation, she can tell you, all right, I'm doing my TBR for month X. I'm really looking forward to this book. And she can get to it, and it can disappoint her, and she will let you know in no uncertain terms. And when she's looking at her wide variety of romances and showing enthusiasm, every once in a while, the tone of enthusiasm in her voice will change. It will become, let's just say, a little more urgent. Her enthusiasm will become a little more urgent, a little more pointed, and that is almost always when she is talking about cowboy romances. I had largely dismissed cowboy romances before I started watching her channel, and then I got some in the mail. I used to get cowboy romances in the mail, but I would largely dismiss them, and then I stopped because of her, and I see the appeal. Let's just put it that way. So the first book I want to show you is by Carolyn Brown, who does cowboy romances exclusively. This is Cowboy Strong, and this is the second Longhorn Canyon novel, and I read the first one. I read the previous book in this series. I don't think it was the first one. I got it in the mail and thought nothing of it, and then Sarah's channel convinced me to read it, to read the book before this one. And I thought it was really, really good. As most real-life cowboys in the American West are not attractive, to put it mildly. But Carolyn Brown knows whereof she speaks. This was really, really good. And then the next one I want to show you is, the next one I'm looking forward to is a biography. I have not received it yet. It's not the sort of thing that I would typically go out of my way to request. I'm not going to be commissioned to review it, but I would review it for Open Letters Monthly, Open Letters Review. So we will see. But I really like the sound of what I've read about it. It's by Kim Campbell, and it's about her husband Glenn Campbell, the famous singer. It's called Gentle on My Mind, and it's about her life with Glenn Campbell in sickness and in health. in pleasure and in misery, all the way through his addictions, all the way through the ups and downs of his life and his career. And I think that would be fascinating. I don't know anything about the details of that story at all, so it wouldn't ambition to be fascinating. It would be new to me. Then this next one is not new to me. In one sense, it's not new to me because it's an anthology, and I have read everything in it many, many, many times. Probably it would not be an exaggeration to say that every single thing in this anthology I have read hundreds of times. I know everything about everything in this anthology. But I still want it because I went 50 years thinking anthologies like this would never exist. And now they do. This is the Legion of Superheroes, my beloved Legion of Superheroes, which is a 50-year-old comic book property about a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future who come back in time 1,000 years to recruit Superboy. Clark Kent, when he was a superpowered teenager in Smallville, they recruit him to come forward in time with them 1,000 years and be part of their team. And it has wonderful history and there's a wonderful charisma to the idea, because this is a Clark Kent who would be alone. This is Superboy flying around thwarting bank robberies in Smallville, would have had the company of no other super beings. Unlike Superman, who has the Justice League, he has a world full of superpowers. Superboy would have been lonely. That point is almost never made in Superboy's innumerable comic books that cannot be reprinted. What I wouldn't give for a giant omnibus edition of Superboy comics, but there are legal issues involved. But that point was almost never made in his comics, but a reader, even a young reader, could easily imagine it, that would be true, and that would be one of the charms of him joining the Legion and going forward in time where all these kids have superpowers. And DC finally, after a long, long time of pleading on the part of fans, Legion fans are more dedicated than any other comic book fan. And if you make a product, they will buy it en masse. Legion fans begged forever, could you start collecting all of these Legion adventures? You've done it in black and white. Could you start collecting these things? You've done it in slim hardcover volumes, but what about big omnibus volumes for the shelf? And DC listened, and we've seen it. I think I've shown the first 2 volumes on this channel, and now in June anyway, I don't know if it's going to happen, the date might change, but June is slated for the 3rd volume. The Legion of Superheroes, the Silver Age Legion of Superheroes Omnibus Volume 3. Big, thick thing that'll go on the shelf next to my first 2 omnibus volumes. Right now, it looks like this is the cover that they're choosing. This is from a 2-part adventure where Mordru the Merciless, this guy in the funny hat up top there, one of the Legion's most powerful villains, tracks a small handful of Legionnaires into the past. The fight actually goes back to 20th century Smallville. You have the 2 most powerful Legionnaires, Mon-El and Superboy, here shown dangling and tied up with rope. Odd choice for a cover. There are plenty of other covers from this era that maybe don't raise so many questions. I'm not particularly objecting. I'll take what I can get. And then you have Triplicate Girl, Duo Damsel, and then the young girl in blue there is Shadow Lass, and the girl with wings and a sort of a bee outfit is Superboy's girlfriend, Lana Lang, who was an honorary member of the Legion of Superheroes, but stayed mostly, and she never went on adventures with them. She stayed mostly in the 20th century, and I'm not sure why the powers that be chose this particular cover, and maybe this won't be. Maybe this is just mock-up art. Maybe this won't be the cover. I would like to think that, I mean, with the previous 2 covers, the previous 2 omnibus volumes, they commissioned somebody to do a new cover. I would like to think they'll do that now, and that this is just a placeholder. But one way or another, this is going to be 1,000 pages of the Legion of Superheroes, so I am, to put it mildly, looking forward to it. The next one is also a graphic novel. Maybe it was collected at one point or another, and I just don't know about it, but I'm looking forward to it. This is a deluxe edition of Nightwing Year 1. Nightwing is Dick Grayson, the original Robin, who was Batman's sidekick forever and ever and ever, and then got older and older and older. Of course, Batman doesn't age, but the sidekicks do. And eventually, Nightwing became a teenage Robin the Teen Wonder, and was the leader of the Teen Titans and whatnot, started having tons of adventures on his own. Although Robin always had his own book, almost from the beginning. He had his own individual adventures. And then, at one point in the run on the Teen Titans, Dick Grayson decides to jettison the Robin costumed identity completely and take up another costumed identity. He calls himself Nightwing. And this is Chuck Dixon's Year One, a sort of homage to Frank Miller's Batman Year One, where we learn what it was like for Nightwing starting out in that first year of being Nightwing, of transitioning from Robin to Nightwing. And I had these original issues. They came out in the Nightwing comic book. And I doted on them because they were drawn by Scott McDaniel, who is just fantastic. He's just incredible as an artist. And this is a deluxe edition of just that storyline. And I don't know if it was collected before, and maybe I have it. I know that somewhere I have those individual issues, but I will take, this is an original Scott McDaniel cover, I will definitely take a deluxe edition of this. Now, this and the Legion of Superheroes aren't a typical example anyway, because I don't have any contacts at publishing houses, at comic book publishing houses. I have from time to time, but they change rapidly, and they're very chary with sending out review copies. And so I have not had any luck getting, I would review both of these things for an audience that you can count in the thousands if they would send them to me, but they typically don't, and I don't wait anymore. I don't ask and then wait. I ask and then buy. So these two are a little anomalous, because these wouldn't be part of the normal run of things. Even in 2019, when my reviewing life was normal, I wouldn't have expected to get these as review copies. But I'm still eagerly looking forward to. This next one, I'm eagerly looking forward to. This author has an almost unbroken track record of approval from me. And I'm a little ashamed that I haven't read this yet, except that in my own defense, I can say I would have requested it, read it, and maybe be on a second read of it if I'd been commissioned to review it. But although it is major, it is not the kind of thing I'm commissioned to review. And so I didn't request. And because of the world that we live in now, I kind of need to request something in order to get it. So I'm going to have to borrow it from the library if the library reopens, or maybe get a secondhand copy or something like that, because I'm certainly wanting to read it. But this is Rodham by the novelist Curtis Sittenfeld, who is fantastic. She is fantastic. I think I barely read anything of hers that I didn't love. And this is, as you can tell from the cover, this is a novel about Hillary Clinton, but it's not. It's about Hillary Rodham. It's a novel that imagines what Hillary Rodham's life would have been like if it had not included Bill Clinton. And I have heard all sorts of wonderful things about. I've read reviews of this thing. Very disorienting for me to be reading reviews of a major release, even if it is a made-up story, that I haven't read. Very strange. Putting me much closer to the world of people who aren't book reviewers than I have been in forever. I'm not sure that I entirely dislike it either. The feeling of FOMO, the feeling of fear of missing out, the feeling of, boy, well, I'm a bit of a fraud if I haven't read this already, is lessened considerably with the knowledge that I still have a full slate of reviews that I'm doing. But so I'm not falling behind on the reviewing world. I'm not falling behind on the world of new releases, but nevertheless, I shouldn't take a whole great amount of comfort in that, because in addition to reviewing, I also have a sort of a personal mission to read all the major new releases in all the genres that interest me in the American publishing world in the year 2020, and this is one of them. So I probably shouldn't have waited as long on this as I have, but I'm looking forward to it. Next one is Natural History, and I can't say that exactly I'm looking forward to it, but I love this series of books. They're oversized, they're gorgeous, they are things to revisit with the family forever. And because of that, I will take what I can get. This is edited by Norman Platnick, and this is Spiders of the World. Can't tell from this picture, but this is going to be an oversized hardcover, because many, if not all, of the spiders in the book will be life-size. The pictures will be life-size, so you'll be looking at the picture that is the size of the creature that you might, if you're unlucky, encounter in the wild. They've done these for snakes. They've done them for frogs. The Frogs of the World was a sublime volume. And it was only a matter of time until they got to arachnids, and that's what this is going to be. And they're amazing books. Don't get me wrong, I don't have any more affection for spiders than any other normal person does, and I've been zapped by quite a few of them. But these are magnificent books, absolutely irreplaceable. So I will gobble it up. I will. Then the next one is romance. This is a feel-good kind of romance. There are all sorts of subgenres of tone and subject matter. We saw Cowboy Strong. Cowboy Strong will barely restrain it, and my guess is that it will barely restrain itself until the character starts flinging off their Stetsons and getting down to business, if you know what I mean. Whereas there are other kinds of romances that are meant to be more sweet, more summer reading, more general, more affectionate than steamy. and this is Rayanne Thane. Summer at Lake Haven. Those of you who are booktube connoisseurs will, I think, have already seen this on Sarah's channel, Steeped in Books. Sarah and I are, believe it or not, even though I'm a huge romance fan and she is the doyen of the reigning queen of romance on booktube, our reading doesn't always overlap at all. She reads a lot, like for instance, she doesn't turn her nose up at special agent type romances, and they wear awful thin on me. And a number of other subgenres as well that I'm trying to learn from her to be more open-minded. But this, I think, was on her list for June, and it's definitely on mine. And I'm pretty sure it's for the same reason, because this author, you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong with this author. You're going to get wonderful three-dimensional characters. You're going to get a warm and involving plot, and it's going to have a wonderful ending. We'll see if this is true. Any author can drop the ball, but I couldn't make a list like this without having Rayanne Thane on that list for the upcoming month if I haven't read it. And she's another example where the publisher may have sent me an advance copy, or they may not have. I would still want to read it. She would still be on my list. Now, this next one is something that the publisher would certainly have sent me in the normal course of things if I were on everybody's list and I was just getting things as a matter of course, like that doorbell that you heard. That could be mail. This would ordinarily have been on my list. But the world right now of the reviewing world for most reviewers in the country right now is that you ask and then you get, as opposed to you get and then they ask, now that you've got it, do you have any plans to write about it? Instead, it's you ask if you want it, because publicists are more swamped than ever. They're more harried than ever. They're working at home, so their kids are asking for their attention all the time. Their spouses are asking for attention all the time. They still have to do their job, and their job is 10 hours a day. So I've not got a copy of this thing. So when I saw it in the listing, I immediately wanted. Of course, I would read it, but I haven't got a copy of it. I might request a copy and see if I get one. This is Jeff Shara, the historical novelist Jeff Shara, who has a whole bookcase of historical novels, and this is To Wake the Giant. This is a novel about Pearl Harbor. He's done a number of books about World War I, about World War II, about the Civil War, of course, like his father. And I am fascinated by the subject of Pearl Harbor, and I have read a handful of books about Pearl Harbor, and to my knowledge, there's never been a great novel about Pearl Harbor. There's been a great movie, not the Michael Bay movie. There's been a great movie about Pearl Harbor. There's also been several great works of history about this one incident. But I don't remember reading a great novel. Maybe some of you have. Let me know if you can drop recommendations for me. But this could well be it. This author has certainly learned his job, so I will gladly gobble this up. I just don't know if I'll have to do it at the library on a waiting list, like a common bridge troll, or if I can request a copy and get it. And then the last one will go back to romance, and not just any romance, but Paul Marin romance. Those of you undistinguishing souls out there who maybe read your romance novels but don't know your romance cover models. There's one particular cover model who once upon a time reigned supreme. You couldn't look at covers without this guy. He's more parsimonious with his work these days, but still. His name is Paul Marin, and he is a great cover model. I'm looking at my romance bookcase. There's a brand new romance. There is our boy. That is Paul Marin right there. But he's on literally 100 other copies that I could grab at random here and see him. And here he is. A Dark and Stormy Night by Kerrigan Byrne. I have a number of Kerrigan Byrne romance novels here in this romance. The reason I keep looking like this is that's my romance bookcase. Okay, so the whole thing is romances, and I've got a number of Kerrigan Byrne here because she's really, really good. And in this novel, from what I can gather from the synopsis, those cheekbones are Paul Marin. What I can gather in the synopsis of this book is that she decided to just make the most forbiddingly alpha masculine male character that she could imagine. Icy cold, brutal, violent, grim, withdrawn, all of the characteristics that apply to so many romance novel heroes, only here exaggerated and combined together into one incredibly unapproachable package that will then be approached, that will then be warm, that will be the storyline. But I have a feeling that she was just going for absolute exaggerations here. And I'm willing, many of you will have authors where you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm willing to follow this author anywhere. I'm willing to do whatever she wants to do. And it might not work. It might not work as well as other things I've read by her, but I'm willing to watch anything. I'm willing to try anything. That's how much goodwill she has built up with me. And there you go. How do you like that? June 2020, an actual June TBR. I'm amazed. Once upon a time, I would have had all the books that I would have wanted for June, and I would already be reading into July. But this is 9 books that I very much want coming out in June that I don't have. So we'll be even closer together than we already are. Because I will be yearning for these things. I will be looking for them on maybe NetGalley. I will be looking for deals on them to buy online. I'll be looking for them at the library and waiting lists and whatnot, just like everybody else. Fascinating. Of course, I did hear the bell, so there may be free books in the mail, but this is a treat anyway. And a lot of these things, the mass market romances, would not have been a given. I mean, I showed you that bookcase, but that is a fraction of what is out, of what has come out over the decades. Mass market romances would not be a given. Usually what I would do every week was go into my local Barnes & Noble and shop for mass market romances that I was not getting in the mail, because I want more of them than I get. And the same thing is true with those graphic novels. Big Legion Omnibus, the last 2 big Legion Omnibuses I had to buy. And Nightwing Deluxe, they're DC. I would love a contact at DC, but I'm not sure that they would send it to me. So a good proportion, half of this June TBR is stuff that I would have had to go out and get anyway. So anyway, there you go. There's a June TBR. I'm just going to talk about books all morning. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about books all morning. It makes me feel really good to talk to you. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. We have plenty of other stuff to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.